All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I am your host, Cardinellis, with Cody the Oracle.
Hey, everybody.
And it looks like Bernie Sanders is going to, quote, reassess his campaign. He's thinking twice, most likely going to drop out pending some kind of announcement, according to a couple of news outlets now, after having had some stunning defeats in the recent primaries. Cody, please tell us what's going on.
Okay, well, also, let's get to one thing first. I want to clear something up if some of you guys had seen this. Earlier today, Axios did report that Bernie Sanders was planning to drop out. They've since updated that story. Here's the updated Axios story. So I just wanted to get to this first. If we're talking about Bernie Sanders and the state of his campaign. Axios put this out with an update at the bottom saying that we apologize. However, Bernie Sanders did immediately deactivate all 2020 campaign ads. Some media buying things I follow have been saying the same stuff, that as far as media buys goes, Bernie's been trying to cancel what he can. Generally speaking, now, I'm going to tell you this. I was watching Tom Steyer ads day after he dropped out. I was watching Michael Bloomberg ads day after he dropped out. Now, sometimes you cancel the ads that are running next week, not this week. But point being is that this is something that kind of when your campaign's winding down, you generally stop running ads to tell people to vote for you, right? So that's something I want to get to. We'll go a little bit more through this, and they mentioned this here in the Axios. The pause in digital advertising spend on Facebook has been a good indicator that candidates are dropping out of the 2020 race. Pete Buttigieg, Michael Bloomberg made their Facebook ads inactive hours before they suspended their campaigns. Yeah. One of the reasons why Axios did jump the gun on this is because it is kind of like if you don't... It's kind of that official moment when you stop telling people to vote for you for president. It's like, hey, I got good news. Anyone who watches YouTube, Bernie Sanders he'll no longer be asking for anything. Okay, yeah. It appears that's over. We'll get to a few more things though, and that's talking a little bit about what happened last night, because against the better judgment of a lot of people, I mean, I wouldn't have gone through with them.
Yeah,
they did have a lot of primary voting yesterday. By the way, I was going to mention this. Tom Perez is responsible because the head of the DNC, as far as I'm concerned. The DNC, I believe, came out and said that states that delay their primaries will have delegates docked from them at the convention.
Whoa.
Get out of here, dude. If a state,
Jeez.
By the way, Ohio did move the primaries back. It's like, dude, we move our primaries back.
That literally sounds like if you give a better chance to Bernie Sanders by postponing your election. Sorry, not a better chance of Bernie Sanders, but I don't know. That sounds fishy.
No, it basically sounds like we don't want the elections to be postponed at all for any reason.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, fine, I get it, but whatever. I don't want to get too far into it. I saw that come up. There could be more nuance to it. I just do know this, that the DNC has been full steam ahead on business as usual. So. Yeah. Tom Perez is convinced the convention will not be suspended. It's in July. Anyway, enough of my DNC aside rant. Let's get into what's actually going on. So NPR is reporting that Bernie Sanders will be assessing his campaign. By the way, I've never heard a story of somebody assessing their campaign
and then continuing.
Reassessing.
Yeah.
You know what? Maybe we do have a chance. Never heard of that happening. But this is the bigger thing I want to get to. And this is kind of the spoilers. Dude, Bernie Sanders got starched last night. 61% to 20. I mean, he lost by essentially 40 points in Florida.
And that's one of the most important swing states, too.
Exactly. Is he going to beat Trump in Florida?
Yeah, this isn't Oklahoma.
A racism? You know? Exactly. You got a race there. Illinois, another big state. It was Chicago, big city, right? Like, generally, urban centers do well for Bernie. But another 20-plus point defeat. Arizona was kind of close, but still 10-plus.
Yeah, dude. I mean...
After being behind in delegates,
it's brutal.
Having Biden be the front runner for basically functionally a month now, right? Going back to South Carolina about 4 weeks ago. So Biden's basically been the national front runner since then. Every single time we have voting, Bernie Sanders has to kind of go it wasn't great, and then it's getting to the point. It's like, dude, how are you going to pitch to anybody in the Democratic Party? You're going to flip Florida blue from, the presidential election?
Because that was basically the bill of goods.
Erased you. I mean, I think that loss, and there has been, Florida did, but I mean, Adam, the only people impacted by the current pandemic are Biden voters, people 65, 75, who, by the way, are being ordered basically by everyone to remain in their houses, not to go to polling centers. They literally moved polling centers away from places that had older people in Florida, and we still see Joe Biden supporters come out and just basically remove Sanders from the ballot.
Yeah, that's been my biggest frustration too, because a lot of the SJW channels that I subscribe to, when you listen to David Pakman and Kyle Klinsky and a lot of these guys, they're fielding these arguments of voter suppression. Saying that Bernie's low numbers have something to do with voter suppression. There's been even people on MSNBC that have talked about how because it was on spring break, it was racist voter suppression. And I mean, I can't look at a stunning defeat of over 70-30 in some of these areas. 70-30. I mean, it's like a referee in a basketball game. You know, if it's tied 75-75 and there's been a slew of 7 bad calls against one of the teams, if the other team wins by 1, then there's a strong argument that the ref might have actually have interfered with the viability of the results of the contest, right? But when you're hitting 70-30 here, at what point do you just this isn't voter suppression? And by the way, the voter suppression argument would actually be more in favor of Joe Biden's crew, because we know that his audience and his fans and his voters trend much older than Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders has got the youth vote, okay? But the youth vote doesn't show up very well now, okay? And a lot of these elderly people, I mean, people in their 70s, that's one of the things they do religiously. Like next to Ovaltine and bingo, you know what I'm saying? These people vote like crazy, and now they're literally being told to stay home. Some of these people, it's their first time not voting in decades because of coronavirus. And so if we were to interpret the fear of the pandemic and the self-quarantine as a form of voter suppression, Joe Biden would actually have a better argument, saying more of my people were forced to stay home because of things out of my control. So I don't know. My frustration is with that voter suppression argument, and it's completely dead on arrival with me. A lot of these liberal arguments, actually, you know, I toss them over my head, and I want to give them as much credence as I can because I really want to give the benefit of the doubt to as many Americans as I can. But this idea that that's some form of voter suppression, I just can't at all buy into whatsoever. So Cody, continue. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No. Hey, you feel better? You have it out? You had it out now? You feel better about yourself?
I did.
I'm just saying, dude, I'm not going to sit here and tell you the reasoning for what's happening, who was doing what, who wasn't doing what. I'm just going to tell you this. If I was Bernie Sanders, I'd be reassessing my campaign, dude. And again, the main reason I want to get back to, I remember 2016, the night of the general election. I was working as a local reporter at the time, and I was at a watch party for a local Democrat running for Congress, I believe.
Yeah.
And I left that night into another party. But when I was there, it was just as Florida was coming in. It was earlier in the evening. And let me tell you something, man. When Florida flipped for Trump, that was when basically everybody that's when everyone started drinking more. I know that. Yeah. But my point being is that's a super important election in this upcoming general. That's going to be crucial. If any Democrat wants to sell to the party or any voter, they can beat Trump in a general. Like, everyone's saying, I'm the only one who can beat Trump. Tell me you could win Florida then. Tell me you could win the states he flipped from Hillary.
Yeah.
That's how you beat him. You don't beat Trump by just, my ideas are better. Don't care. Like, that's one of the things that frustrates me the most about anything in politics I'm seeing right now is this. It's like these people that are like, but my ideas, there were some, dude, has it ever worked? Has anyone ever got elected on
Andrew
superior
Yang
ideas?
had epic ideas.
You need more than ideas to win. You always do. But I mean, I would say Andrew Yang, he did bring more than ideas. The bigger problem for him was they basically were going to refuse.
He was starting from absolute
he was
zero.
never going to get a seat at the table, ever. He had to force his way in. Even then, they tried to belittle him. It just, they're like, get out of here. You're not one of us. But my larger point of bringing here is just,
by the way, who is the they?
They would be DNC party. Joe Biden's Biden bros. The
Biden bros.
Biden bros, people that are like, get out of here, Andrew Yang. You're not one of us. But again, I do think there was a major sense of animosity of a who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Trump had to deal with as well.
Or just kind of like, who's this kid?
Well, but dude.
Like, who's this kid? I used to babysit him.
There are people who knew they wanted to run for president 15 years ago when they started the first congressional campaign. And they're like, and this guy just decided 20 months ago he wants to run, and I'm not saying it's a noble thing to feel, but I understand where that's. So I think there's stuff like that. But again, I just want to get back to people talking about electability, talk about all this stuff. If you want to beat Trump, tell me how you're going to win the swing states he flipped. Yeah. And Bernie basically having his name erased in one of the biggest swing states in the country. Dude, I can see why he's suspending ads. I can see why he's reassessing. I can see why he's probably getting ready to drop out. How we got here, I'm not 100% sure how we got here. To be honest, I still kind of can't believe that Joe Biden's is, because functionally today, Tulsi's still running, but it's just she's not getting voting, so it doesn't matter that she's not going to beat Joe Biden just because the delegate math doesn't add up, and she's not getting the support in the polls. She's still running. I want to mention that. My larger point here, though, is Joe Biden's functionally the nominee now. I mean, Bernie is not officially suspended, but let me tell you something, dude. If I'm a Democratic voter and I want to beat Trump, losing it by 50 points in Florida is now you beat Trump. So that's going to be an issue moving forward, and it's, I don't know. It is so. If you had asked me 9 months ago, is Joe Biden going to run against Donald Trump? I would have said, no way. But I was saying for months, like Joe Biden, I'm like, dude, he doesn't really campaign. He doesn't raise that much money. He doesn't even show up in a lot of states.
Well, what's interesting,
and he's just based. I mean, today he's functionally won the nominee. It's not over yet. We still have a convention coming up in July. But the only prominent candidate with a large share of delegates running is on the. Rightfully so about to drop out. Only because here's the thing where you could say Bernie's got all these reasons to stay in the race. I'm just saying, if you want to assess your campaign properly, spotting Trump Florida in a general if you win the nominee, it's like, wow, that's an awful place to start from.
Yeah. Now, I got a question for you before I say my statement. Do you have a feeling that he has overperformed or underperformed from what your expectations were when we started covering this primary?
Bernie Sanders?
Yeah.
Oh, underperformed big time. I mean, Bernie, he just like I don't have the numbers up right now. I'll see if I can. I don't know what. I can basically say with a lot of confidence, Bernie Sanders' 2020 campaign had worse results than his 2016 campaign. How he moved backwards in 4 years, I don't understand. I really don't.
Yeah.
I don't know
because
how,
he shifted the Overton window so far, you'd think that he would be a front runner.
Well, he is.
I mean, every single person on that stand
for a day
on the first Democratic debate, every single person on that stand was raising their hand saying, I have a Medicare for all plan. And that's completely due to Bernie Sanders in 2015.
But the problem with that, I think the problem
and then
with
to
that,
see him doused like this.
But it's 5 years ago now.
No, I get that it's 5 years ago.
He shifted the window, so now no one needs him to be the only one talking about it. Does that make sense?
And the other interesting thing for me, this is also goes back to my statement, is did you watch any parts of the non-audience televised debate between Biden and Bernie Sanders?
Of all the debates, probably the least. I've seen parts, but less than any other debate.
Yeah, I was virtually completely tuned out and could barely finish any of it because it is eerie when there's nobody clapping. You know, there is an eeriness to it. But I will tell you this. I was amazed how Biden, I don't think a lot of people watched it because everybody was paying attention to Corona news. But Biden had also shifted from really adopting a lot of these progressive ideas. I mean, his first commercial when he announced that he was running really sounded like it was written by a staffer in AOC's office, okay? An immediate attack on Trump, an immediate embrace of the most progressive values, so on and so forth. And then now he was actually kind of railing instead of trying to get along with a lot of these progressive ideas and kind of show how he was a front runner 40 years ago with a lot of the things that you now call progressive, he was straight up ripping on Bernie Sanders saying, there's no way Medicare for all could handle a pandemic. You know what I'm saying? There's no way, and he actually was now, instead of kind of trying to get along with Bernie Sanders, was actually directly railing on the guy in what to me was a pretty observable shift in attitude towards the progressive wing of the party. Does that make sense?
I don't know. I think the bigger issue he had was just that I think he's, and that's something Andrew Yang needs to watch out for. I don't think Andrew Yang will fall into it as well. He's younger and has the more flexibility to him. But as I kind of said, I think what happened was Bernie Sanders did shift the Overton window, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
In doing so, he created spaces for a bunch of politicians that aren't him to talk about similar things differently than him. Again, not him, though. So the problem is that progressive space he was the, kind of unofficial king of in 2016.
Yeah.
It's bigger now. There's more people in it. There's other personalities. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez there was a falling out behind the scenes with the campaign because she wanted to be more I think there was a falling out for many reasons. There's many reasons why it was a falling out. My point being, though, is that there wasn't this unified progressive front. I guess I don't want to get too far into the post-mortem here, but I would have to say one thing this showed us more than anything. The unity in the progressive side appears to be a myth. I don't see it. I don't see, or either that or the progressive side really is just a few people with loud voices and they are united. One or the other at this point, because we've seen we've seen progressives endorse other progressive candidates and them lose. We've seen Bernie Sanders struggle here. We've seen there be behind the scenes. It just seems to be and it's sad, but it happens so often, right? Where you have you have these people on one side and they're working really hard, really trying to go up against this woman upstream, trying to change a lot of stuff, right? And maybe they got the passion, and it's just, you got these like moronic stooges on the other side that just keep blindly plowing forward the same way that they've been plowing forward their ancestors 100 years before them. And it's like, it doesn't matter how fast you run, how hard you work, those morons that have been plowing the same fields for 100 years are going to just keep plowing it the same way and beat you. And Joe Biden did it. It's like, how did Joe Biden win? They convinced everyone to drop out and endorse him. Did Elizabeth Warren endorse him? Did Tulsi Gabbard endorse Bernie? No. Everyone dropped out to endorse Biden. Everyone got behind Biden. Kamala Harris had one moment in her campaign.
What's going to happen with Tulsi?
Kamala Harris had one shining moment in her campaign, calling Joe Biden racist. She endorsed Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's endorsed Joe Biden. We have not seen the same for progressive with Bernie, and that was, so again, is it a myth of unity with progressives? Is Bernie not a true? What is it? But I'm just telling you, there wasn't this big there wasn't a very strong united front of progressive. Maybe they were united, but Elizabeth Warren not endorsing him is pretty bad. His best friend.
I like your terminology of the myth of unity, because you think that now there would be this barrage of people all of a sudden bumping up Tulsi, because she, in theory, if it was establishment versus progressive, obviously the woman who was in the DNC, who dropped out of the DNC establishment in order to endorse Bernie Sanders, would be considered about as progressive street cred as it gets. But you don't see her numbers skyrocketing.
This is, again, it's when we talk about, I don't want to get too focused on this concept, but you have a really good point there. Tulsi Gabbard really did burn her career down to support Bernie. She did.
Yeah.
She stepped down as vice chair, but she didn't just step down as vice chair. She stepped down as vice chair to support the candidate running basically against the DNC, A. B, she stepped down despite Hillary Clinton. Any of you guys wondering why Hillary Clinton crawls out from wherever she hangs out to just slam Tulsi for no reason? Like, Tulsi Gabbard, of all people, why her? It's because she feels personally slighted to this day by Tulsi Gabbard. And the fact that Bernie Sanders has done very, very little publicly to support Tulsi Gabbard as she's gone through this has been... we were talking earlier about something, and it's...
he doesn't support people that support him.
But here's the bigger thing, is there's a sense that... I don't know what he feels behind the scenes. When it comes to choosing a leader, one of the things that's really important to me is that somebody who's a leader really kind of bears the weight of those around him. And Tulsi Gabbard gave up a lot to support Bernie. And on the outside, maybe... I'm not going to say I know what's going on, but on the outside, it looks like that was more or less taken for granted. And really, there wasn't this much of a, my good friend Tulsi Gabbard really went through a lot to try to support me in a very, very tough time for everyone. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard, if she had just kept her mouth shut, probably would have been the Democratic nominee for president in 2020. They were grooming her for that role. After 2015, she was going to go from vice chair of DNC, bump up somewhere during the first year, and she was probably going to be the 2020 nominee, assuming Hillary lost, right?
Yeah.
Until she did what she did. And just to see a very... I'm not saying Bernie's turned his back on her, but I haven't seen this sense of Bernie's really said, we are in this together. I know we're running against each other right now, but you've given up a lot to support me. I will give some to support you. I never saw that, and I wonder if, not specifically the Tulsi, but I do wonder if along the way Bernie Sanders has maybe taken too many souls for granted, and it's just starting to cost him. I don't know what it is, but seeing him perform, not only, the only other thing people are saying is that, wow, everyone really hated Hillary, didn't they? It's sad, but like people are starting to say now that maybe Bernie was getting anti-Hillary votes in 2016 as opposed to pro-Bernie votes, and that's what we saw in the far as the receding of his voting. But yeah, it's been a rough. It started so good. It started so good for Bernie. Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada. Wow, it looked like he was going to win the nominee. For a brief few days there, 538 actually had him as the favorite. He was actually he was favorited over contested convention, which was rare at that time. And now we're basically just, he hasn't dropped out, but the campaign's over. He has very little path to victory, and he can't really sell that he can beat Trump to people anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know what he does, and it's
the bill of sale was a revolution in the electorate and a revolution in the way they vote, and it wasn't even really a significant bump. I think in some of these areas he lost by a thicker margin in 2020 than he did in 2016 to Hillary. So, I agree with you. I don't really see it. What are those devices, Cody, where they say clear? Defibrillators. Yeah, I don't see you being able to defibrillate. No pun intended with his heart condition. But I don't see you really being able to defibrillate this campaign with any kind of relatively predictable victory coming up anytime soon with Bernie Sanders. And really, I give props to Joe Biden's campaign. Despite all those early losses in Nevada, early losses in Iowa,
Remember,
early losses where he bailed out of New Hampshire before the votes were counted. Yeah. And he kept on saying, oh, well, South Carolina is going to turn us around. And everybody was literally saying, please just drop out before you embarrass yourself further. Now, oh my gosh, good thing he didn't, because I, in a million years, would never have predicted he trounced Bernie Sanders so badly.
Big thing we took away from that, though, I think, which we all saw big time firsthand, early states mean nothing. They mean nothing. Pete Buttigieg was winning in delegates heading into Nevada.
Yeah.
Like, they just don't matter, and I think we saw that. It was one of the things I think that kind of hurt Andrew Yang's campaign. Too much focus in Iowa, a state that he performed very poorly in and spent all of his money in and got nothing out of. So it's like maybe he would have been better off doing. Let me tell you guys something else, though. Tom Steyer did that. Tom Steyer moved his entire operation to South Carolina.
Yep.
And he did perform better, but also the risk you run is coming away with 0-0-0 in the first 3 states and then like 2 delegates in South Carolina isn't like, oh, cool, now I'm going to win. So I'm not saying that Yang necessarily ran his campaign wrong. I'm just saying he ran into that issue as well, where investing heavily in an early state that voted for Pete Buttigieg for some reason, like really, really basically kind of sunk him. And then we see with Joe Biden, where he kind of ignored. I mean, Joe Biden ignored every state, which is, I think, why he did so well moving forward. As you get farther in the campaign, dude, nobody's campaigning any of these states. You had 13 states voting in one day. They really campaigned in all these states. Yeah. So, Joe Biden, when you have a state nobody really campaigned in, no one's people just kind of ran ads in, he did really good in all those states that no one really ground gained on.
So here's a question I have for you. And who knows, maybe we make this its own video, okay? But what Joe Biden did and the attitude that you just described, saying, okay, you know, he didn't really care about those early states, and Joe Biden succeeded in spite of significant losses in all the, quote, important early states. Joe Biden's current success story in the nomination process now looks a lot like the nomination the people that succeeded in securing the Democrat nomination before Jimmy Carter changed the political landscape to this, let's rush to Iowa and get the early gains and the early headlines that will hopefully boost us forward. Do you think going forward, we will maybe go back to the pre-Carter ways where the early states don't matter as much and they just happen to be early states?
Well, remember, also keep in mind, we're going to be seeing a lot of shift up in the early states because Iowa ain't going first. I know that. And we're probably not going to see very many caucuses anymore either. So I'm hard to say.
Okay, cool. Because I think we're actually going to go back to pre-1972 politics. I really think the lackluster performance, like you say, of the caucus system, the lackluster performance, the integration of technology into some of these early states, the inability to predict future success. Every single person that won every early state is now bowing the knee to Joe Biden. And the one person who specifically avoided them, Michael Bloomberg, hoping to, pay out the election or basically purchase it, really didn't succeed either. The only person that succeeded in this nomination process is the person who ran the campaign like somebody would have in the 40s, 50s, or 60s. So I'm curious if there won't be a little bit of a shift away from these early states and back to the classic model that existed for 100 years since we basically had a continental United States with 50 united states and the other protectorates that are included. I'm curious if there won't be actually another shift towards a more classical model. But anyway, let us know what you guys think in the comments below. Follow us on PSP Radio 1. Join the channel if you can. It's only $5 a month and a great way to keep us corporate sponsor free and keep this content coming to you guys. Also, make sure if you want to email us, you send it to problemsolverpolitics@gmail.com, and you follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Problem Solver Politics. This is Problem Solver Politics. See you guys in the next video.